Welcome everyone, my name is Manuel Martinez and this is another episode of Career Downloads, where each episode basically hit the refresh button, bring on a different guest to learn more about their background, their experience, and really how they manage their career over time. To be able to kind of pull out any actionable advice that you can go ahead and use as you're managing your own career. So for today, I have with me Fernando Reyes, and we're going to talk about his career journey, which I think is pretty interesting. We've had some conversations before, and he really had a goal in mind, like an end goal, and he just consistently worked to being able to get there. So he didn't know what was going to happen in between, but again, he was okay with kind of, being able to move back and forth and, really adjust over time. So I think it will be a good, experience and a good story for everybody to kind of listen to. So with that, go ahead and plug in and download the knowledge, and I will introduce Fernando.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for having me.
Of course, no problem. Glad you were able to come make it and kind of share your background.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Well, like you said, it's been a couple of years with career in mind and goals in mind. As we get older, we start thinking, hey, where do I really want to be at? So about 5-6 years ago, I decided to have a goal in mind. I saw a position I liked, and now I have that position. But it was not it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it ends up that way.
Right.
So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of so everybody can get an understanding of who you are. So if you just don't mind telling us what your current position is, and then just a summary of what your roles and responsibilities are.
Sure. So I am a systems technician 2. That's the formal position. I'm a glorified desktop technician, basically giving support to end users with their computer and anything related to technology, printers, conference rooms, anything else like that. That's basically what I do for Clark County. I work for the county. Yeah.
And now we'll go ahead and we'll kind of start and get a little bit of history about your experience and your background. So if you wouldn't mind kind of telling me, kind of like where you grew up and then eventually what got you interested into technology.
Yeah. So I'm from Mexico originally. I was born in Tijuana, born and raised there. And my dad introduced me to technology pretty early on. I remember one time he just arrived and got us a computer. It was a Windows 95. That was my first contact with technology as in a computer, right? And I remember that I always liked, electronics. I think we had LP radio, and I would mess up with stuff, and I would open the electronics, and my dad would get mad because I would just try to fix everything. I think that was my first touch with technology. Finally, he got us a computer to my brothers and my sister and myself, and he just teach us how to use Lotus 1, 2, 3 and printing, and then came PowerPoint, and I remember he had us for school encyclopedia. It's called Encarta. That was back in the day, like with just a couple DVDs, and you just put them in, research information to use it. And that's what I think that was basically my first encounter with technology, and I was fortunate enough that my dad provided that instrument and allowed us to learn. But as I grew up, I didn't really get that much guidance as of you can have this as a career, and I think I just went for what I thought was okay. I like animals, and I like the sea and stuff like that, and I decided to go to college for biology, and that was my choice. And so I moved to another city. I started going to college, and then I moved here to Vegas. I think it was 2007 on December. I remember I arrived here, and I've been a Christian my whole life, and as I started going to church here, they told me, hey, would you want to help out with the multimedia ministry? That was the where the cameras, the recording, the sound, the lights, and all that stuff. So I really got into that. And after I started that journey, they gave me the opportunity to be there more time, right? To a point where I was hired by my church to work for them, and I was there for 11 years from that point. and it was just everything just kind of fell into pieces, and I was given opportunities, and I didn't say no.
And so then when you got that computer, it wasn't, it was kind of more of a tool, right? It was a tool for you guys to go be able to do your homework, to be able to do research. So it wasn't like, hey, here's a computer and, like you said, start trying to forge a career out of it. It was really like, hey, this is probably the future, right? And just it kind of really did not fall behind at that point, because Windows 95, that's around the time, I think we did 95 or 98 is around the time when we got our computer at home. So, again, it was just like, now you can do your homework, you can do your assignments.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's exactly what my dad said. He was very into looking to the future. And my dad was like, oh, this is going to be the future. So you guys should, take advantage of this. I remember one time I got in trouble because I took my assignment. I was in elementary at the time. I took it on a paper and printed the paper, and the teacher didn't want to receive my paper, and my dad had to go and talk to them about it. But yeah, he saw the future, and he gave us that tool, but that's about it. He didn't tell us what you mentioned. Hey, this could be a career for you or anything, because he is an accountant, and he didn't really give us any more advice about that. And my mom, same way. She supported us, and he supported us as well, but they didn't really give us like a guidance. Hey, you should do this. You just want to choose something, go to college, I'll pay for it. That's it, But yeah, until I got here is where I kind of shifted, and I started thinking, oh, what do I really want to do? And that's where everything kind of started to fall in.
And so him being an accountant, so then my guess is that's probably where he saw it, right? Because he's probably using computer at work to kind of do, like you said, Lotus 1, 2, 3 and all that, like being able to do Excel spreadsheets and kind of manage it forward.
Yeah.
So then biology, and then you ended up coming here. So then as you're kind of picking up all the multimedia, right? It's not a PC, but it is a lot of electronics. So it's technology. So when they hired you on, what types of things were you doing from them? Was it just kind of basic setup, or if you kind of just walk me through the different skills you were picking up in that role?
Yeah, so there was one coworker I had, which basically not my boss directly, but he was an authority, and he taught us a lot. Me and another coworker I had at the time, but I was mostly at the beginning helping with recording during the live services, be in the mixer, to move the cameras and make sure everything is recorded to a DVD. At the time, it was still recording to DVDs. We had a little machine, a little mixers with the screen, with the multi-views and everything like that. And that was the basic role. And then I got into editing, editing videos, making videos, and we had to send them out to show them on TV on certain channels. And that's where I started getting into computers. Like, oh, why does this program is not as fast when I edit the video? And then why does it take so long to edit the video? And that's where I started doing a little more research, and then talking to that person that it was like a mentor. I think one of my first technology mentors I've ever had, and he started showing, the computer needs RAM, the computer needs this. What is all this, And I started looking into it, doing research, and until I got to build my first computer, and not far along with that experience that I had, and I was given recommendations. Hey, we should buy this computer so we can edit this video. Oh, but it's too expensive. Oh, but I think it's cheaper if we make it. And I seen, that's when YouTube was starting to be a thing. So look in YouTube, hey, you can build a computer like this. Follow this tutorial. And that's how I started getting more experience. From the recording and the lights and putting everything together to editing the video, and then getting involved with we should have a better computer so we can build one.
So then and that's pretty interesting, right? That is, instead of just kind of saying hey, this is slow, and having somebody else deal with it, the fact that you've had that curiosity to start going through and saying, hey, you know what, I'm interested in this, why isn't this working? I want to make this better. Right. And during that time, so about how much time did you spend doing that role of editing, and kind of, what was that time span from when you first kind of understood like, oh, it's slow because I need more memory, more RAM, to, eventually you're starting to put PCs together? Like, is that like a 3 months, 2 months, 6 months?
I think it was probably more like about a year since I got the opportunity, because at the beginning it was just like a part-time job, right? I would just go in my spare time, and then there was more of a need, so I started going for longer periods of time until I decided to quit my job and then just have that job there with the church. And I think it was probably about a year since I started volunteering, and then they gave us a chance. Who wants to be here more involved? I raised my hand and started going more often, getting mentored by the people that were already there. And yeah, probably about a year since I started to doing that. And mind, I wasn't like completely computer illiterate, because I was always interested in technology. I just never knew it was a career path that you could take. So I always had, like, I remember my first, when I was in college, my mom bought me a compact laptop, a 17-inch compact laptop that had the button to open it up still, little square size. We bought it at Fry's, which doesn't exist anymore. But, I was able to get that, and I would like to see videos and tutorials and stuff about computers, and I remember we had Windows XP, and how can you make it look like Windows Vista without having Windows Vista? So you download and theme it out to kind of look like Windows Vista, but it's not really Windows Vista. So I think that's how I always had that technology like side of like, oh, you need to figure things out, you need to, that technological thinking or logical thinking of trying to figure things out. And I always like to explore that, and I took advantage when I was given that opportunity to help and to work for church. Then I took that opportunity, and they gave me the opportunity, and I also made mistakes and broke things, but they gave me that opportunity, and I took it, and that accelerated to where I am now for sure.
And it sounds like they gave you the ability to kind of make those mistakes, obviously without probably the fear of like being fired and saying, okay, hey, nothing that you were doing there probably was like, detrimental.
Right. Yeah, I would never be like, oh, I'm gonna completely disarm that computer and break it forever. Like I always like consult, hey, like I think we could do this. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, but we can try it if you guys let me do it. And most of the time they would say yes.
And you mentioned that there was somebody else that was kind of mentoring you, but was it really just you doing most of the work at that point? Because I'm just wondering, you're doing a lot of the kind of research on your own, but sometimes, at least early on in your career, it's kind of helpful to have somebody to ask questions, and then at some point to bounce ideas off. Like you said, hey, I want to try this. I don't know if it's going to work, but here's, was it really just I want to try it and figure it out? Or did you have somebody to kind of bounce ideas and say, hey, you know what do you think about this? And, kind of have that back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a bouncing back and forth. At the beginning, obviously, I was just listening, and I would just hear, hey, this is how this works. We follow this process, and, that's how it works. But then, there's a point where things don't work as fast as one would like, maybe. And that's where I would try to figure out, oh, I mean, that's how you tell me the process is, but I found this. What do you think about this process? And, oh, what do you think about this computer? We can use this for this and this, for this a purpose. And they would be like, oh yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's present it. And that's how, we started building that relationship for, I trust what you tell me, and, I give you an idea, and you can hear me out. And sometimes, it will be applied, sometimes it won't. But I had those ears open, because I proved myself already that I can make things happen. And, I put my effort into things, and at some point it was just more like a partnership rather than a mentorship. Nice. And, then it just went from there. And they gave me opportunities, and then they gave me more IT roles rather than giving me just a video role, the production role. Then I started shifting to doing both at the same time.
Okay. So then it wasn't just kind of the editing, and it wasn't just fixing that for the editing. Eventually you became, it's probably not a big shop, but I mean, they still probably have other computers to where you're having to go through and manage it. And on the kind of like on the production side, it's not PC related, but there is a lot of technology. So what was, like what was kind of some of the skills? Because I'm assuming there you also having to do troubleshooting, like not just PC troubleshooting, but you're like, hey, this light's not working, or hey, the video signal for this isn't kind of working. So you start to kind of develop those troubleshooting skills, like you said, even if it's not PC or technology related, they're still valuable. It's a valuable mindset to kind of go through. So was there a lot of that kind of going on?
Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes, when something would happen, you have to figure out what's wrong. Obviously the technology process, right? Okay, what is the process look like? Okay, so the light's connected to this controller, and this controller is connected through this cable, and the controller has this power connected to this power, and the light's connected to this power. So you start pinpointing, okay, the power on the light is fine. Oh, the connection from the mixer to the light is fine. Oh, the mixer doesn't have power. Why doesn't it have power if they're connected to the same source? So you just start looking and trying to figure out how things work. So it's just the technology process, right? Trying to figure out what the process looks like and try to dissect that into, okay, what are the points of failure that you can have? And it's very similar, the two, go hand in hand, because you need computers. Most of the things that we do now, or the production world, like it's all managed by computers. Since the sound consoles to the video consoles. Some video consoles are computer based completely. It's a computer, and you just have an app that works off of that computer. Same thing with the soundboards and the light boards as well. So yeah, it's definitely. I was able to learn logical thinking and enhance that through that process, through having that role, which I think was also a key thing for me to transition to IT and think like an IT person, like an IT technician, instead of a editor, a producer, or a technical director or something like that. So yeah, definitely had a lot of influence to get to that point as well.
And then now you're starting to kind of expand. You're doing, you're still doing the video editing, you're doing the IT work. And what kind of is the next step from there? Like, do you continue to grow more within that role? Do you start kind of deciding that, hey, you know what, I like this IT as a career? Or, kind of what's your mindset as you're going to that point? Because I'm assuming at some point you decide it's time to move on to something else.
Yeah, so definitely, I believe there's a point where I realized, like, man, I've always had this IT passion since the beginning. I just didn't know, I didn't know what it was, and I definitely started shifting from that producer job to that IT job, and to where I had to balance those things out, right? So I was doing both. I couldn't get out of either because I was the director at that point. A few years later, I was the director of the department entirely of the, since from the live services to production, post production, everything. I was fortunate enough to have that role, but I was balancing both. Okay, I need the internet to go faster. How do we figure this out? So research, learn, then present and implement everything. So that's when I started to like kind of veer off. I do like production. I think it's a great thing if I would get an opportunity to do that kind of job. I wouldn't say no. I think it's something else that I am passionate about as well. But IT, I think is for me, it's like my favorite child. I love IT and I love the process and the way that things work. And
I have a question for you. When you mentioned at some point, you're starting to just kind of do the PC technician work and you became a director. So what was that process to kind of go through and get promoted? Were you doing that just because you're taking on additional responsibilities? Did your mentor kind of leave, or how did your progression within there happen?
Yeah, so there was a point where my mentor at the time, left the company, and of course I had to take that role completely, and I was the technician for the church in general. Besides being the director of the media department, the production or broadcast department. There wasn't really like a name or anything. It was just I was in charge of the whole thing, and I had that responsibility on me, and now I also had the IT responsibility together, and I had to do both. My mentor had to leave the company, and I had to take over and make sure that everything that he did, I covered it as well. And he was also, because there was not an IT position. To this day, my church, it doesn't have an IT position. It's just, somebody that is the most technical of all, and he's the one that handles that. And right now, like I help my church as a volunteer. I do IT work, whenever we have to do any kind of technical work, IT work, then I offer, my volunteer help. But yeah, I had to take more responsibilities. Now it's just my responsibility. Now it's not somebody else's, and they're like letting me help. Now it's my responsibility, and something goes wrong, then it's my responsibility. I gotta make sure that it works. I gotta make sure. It's not a small church. We're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 members of church, and a big church. And when we moved from a smaller location to a big location, we had to make sure everything worked. I went through the whole building process with when we built our building that we are in now. And I got that experience of like a project manager, like make sure everything works, make sure everything's connected. Where do you want this RJ45 plugs at? Where do you want the server room to be at? And be involved in those decisions and make sure that everything worked. So I think they baptized me as the main IT technician at the time, not per choice, just because we had to. Right. There was nobody else to do it. So,
and kind of, I didn't realize you were doing it at that level, right? So they're building this obviously brand new and having to say, here's where the RJ45s and server rooms. So how did you determine that? Like, was it just you're still researching online to figure out, hey, what's the best place? Or are you kind of going off experience on the last place? Like, hey, when we set up at the last place, we knew that we had an RJ45, but we're having to run a 70-foot cable. It'd be nice if maybe we had these every 20 feet. Like, right. Kind of what was the thought process there?
So it was a mix, past experience and what would we want to have. Back then, I wasn't very knowledgeable in wireless, right? So everything had to be plugged in. Every office, because there was an office space, there were classrooms, there was the creative room, we call it, because that's where the editors and everybody else sat, including myself, when we worked at the new building. And then there's the broadcast room, then there's the sound booth, and then there's a bunch of places where we want to put TVs in the future. We got to think of the future, because this building has a possibility of expansion, so it can expand east or it can expand south. So we had to think about that. It was just like a thing thrown at us, like, oh, this is what we want. What do you think should happen? What do you think? How many connections is going to be there? So we had to just, my mentor was still around at the time, so we just had to, hey, we don't like this here. We can move it here. Can we have more plugs? Can we have more outlets for the power as well? In the server room, like, I feel as this is one of the biggest things that we have till now. Not long ago, I just installed a actual server rack, because we didn't have one. We just had like a freestanding rack. It was not even bolt on the floor or anything, with the switches and everything. And one day I realized that we never thought about it, and it was just like loose, and oh my gosh, like, we have to fix this. So I was like, I think somebody donated a bunch of racks. We had them at an old building we had. And I was like, oh, we can use one of those. So I installed a new server rack. I changed everything. And, that's the experience that you get, right? And things that you've never done before. So yeah, it was a mix of everything, how it was before, how we struggled in the past, and now the things that we don't want to struggle. And so how are we going to make this happen? Are we going to, what steps of action are we going to take to not go through the same situations we were in before? And I think that's just that kind of critical thinking that we had, and I was allowed to share and express with leadership to make those changes. And most of the times they say yes, it's a church, so budget is always a big thing. We got to make sure that we allocate our resources the best way that we can, not being the cheapest that we can, but something in the middle, something that works for the church and that is not going to break the bank, right? So I like to think myself as a great person to get the best that we can with the least amount of money that we have, and that developed that in me, and that's how we help and how we keep helping till today. That I'm a volunteer at the church as well.
And were you involved in the budget process of that? Because I know it's one thing, and I've very rarely have I been involved in those types of projects. And it's nice to like, well, what do you want? Well, I want connections here. I want all this. But then when they start going through budgets and saying, okay, well, wait a minute, to add a drop every 20 feet is going to cost us this much. But if we do it every 40 feet, here's what we're saving. So I know you have your wish list and you're trying to figure it out, but were you also involved in the budget price? Because you mentioned that you were pretty good at doing the best you can with the resources that you have. But were you involved in the budget process?
At the beginning, I wasn't, because I'm still new. I'm still relatively new in the IT world, right? In the production world. So it was suggestions. Hey, I would like to have this. If we can't do it, we can only give you that. We can only give you this, and that's it. I'm like, okay, can you make it work? Yeah, we'll make it work. It's fine. And that was basically it. Yeah. Now down the line, when it was closer, when I had a little more experience, and then they would like give me more freedom to, okay, we should do this. Okay, well, do you think give me 3 budgets, like, so we had to spend 3 budgets, the worst budget, the medium budget, and the best budget. Sometimes, almost always, it was the middle budget, something that I thought was the best thing that we can do. That's going to last us, a long time, and that is not going to break the bank either. And very, very few times it was the least amount of money, the cheapest option, because we didn't want the worst either, right? As long as it works, right, kind of thing. So yeah, it was down the line. It was a process of trust, prove myself that I could lead, and I could actually suggest something that it was going to work. And little by little, I gained that trust, and I was able to present, with bigger and more expensive things in the future.
And all those kind of like the presentation, you're obviously you're proving yourself, but like the leadership and the communication, how did that come about? Like, did you still have your mentor? Is he kind of helping you? Hey, this is how, we communicate this. Are you just kind of doing it on your own? Were you just pretty natural at being able to speak? And
not natural at all. Let me tell you, I've always been an introvert my whole life, and I was never really taught how to not be so introvert. Always been secluded, always with my own thing. But yeah, definitely, my mentor at the time definitely helped me, try to expose those things. And like, we need to give options. This is how leadership likes to hear things. They need to hear. You need to hear. Obviously, it's not about how much it was going to cost, but what is it going to do, and how is it that we cannot do that with what we have now. So they just want like a proof of concept in a way. Like, okay, if we have this new product that we're trying to acquire, let's say a switch, we have a 24 port switch right now. We don't have 24 computers, we have 36. So we can really work with that. In the other computers, we just have to put a mini switch, and that's going to split the connection. It's not going to be good for the network. So you need to explain those things. And if we do the 48 port, which is, only going to cost us $300, then we can definitely use that and get a return on that by not having to buy 10 little switches, So he definitely taught me how to present those things, and it became natural to me after learning that. But with mistakes and all, sometimes things work out, sometimes they didn't. Most of the times they did. I didn't make that many mistakes, but yeah, it's a process. You win some, you lose some, right? And you just have to make sure you do your best every time.
And were you able to be involved in those conversations when your mentor was doing them? Because I know sometimes being able to kind of see that, right, and have exposure to, oh, well, that's what he's doing. Because it's one thing for him to tell you
Right.
what he's saying, and hey, you need to tell him this, but were you also involved in some of those meetings? Like, were you watching him? Was he bringing you in and saying, okay, you run this part of the meeting? I'm just wondering how you were, developing those skills.
Yeah, definitely. I was given the opportunity. It was a learning process for sure to be able to get to that point. But yeah, at first I would just sit in. Sometimes I wouldn't even be in the meeting at the beginning. You're just like, hey, I'm going to talk to him about this. I like your idea, but let me see how they take it, right? And then little by little, and he would always like bring up, hey, Fernando told me this. Fernando brought this up. Fernando did the research for this, and little by little, like putting my name in there. They would, oh, so Fernando has that critical thinking, has that logical thinking. He can do research. He can present and make sure that things work out. So little by little, I gained their trust to do that kind of presentation or that kind of meeting, to be involved in decisions and presentations of, oh, this is what we should do next. And so, yeah, he definitely gave me the opportunity. I owe a lot to him. His name is Eric. I don't know if he's ever going to see this or not, but my first IT mentor I ever had, and he did a lot of teaching to me and give me a lot of opportunities to mess up and to fix things, to figure out what I wanted in life, and when it came to IT, and yeah, definitely a boost in my career.
Right. Well, and not only just giving you that, but being able to advocate for you, right? And saying, because it's one thing, he could be coming here, and again, not saying that they were his ideas, but he could have just said, hey, we think we should do this. We think we should do this. But actually saying, hey, Fernando came up with this. Fernando said something I think that's important for, it was important for your career development,
Yeah.
but just for other people in general. Like, I think that's something I try to do, in the little bit of time that I had, as a manager in leadership role, that's important, saying, okay, well, when it's a group decision, if there's 3 or 4 of us and we're all kind of spitballing, it's hard to say, oh, Fernando came up with this part, he came up with that part. You do say the collective we, but when an individual has a lot more of those kind of ideas, I think it's important that they be given the credit, right, for that.
Yeah, it's definitely important, and definitely boosts your morale and your oh man, I'm doing something right. Obviously, try to not have an identity in that, but know that where you are valued, and you actually people actually listen to you, what you have to say and what you recommend, and obviously own up to, also when you make a mistake, you have to own up to it. That's something that was very hard for me. Like, not that I wanted to hide my mistakes, but it was like, man, like I messed up. Like, oh, now all that trust that I gained already, it's gonna decrease at some point. But good leadership accepts your mistakes, and they coach you through them as well. Good leadership not only like praises the good things, it also tries to help you when something bad happens. It's not just a correction or here's a warning. It's more like, okay, you made that mistake. I understand maybe this is not something you've done before. Let's try to go through it together. And now that you have this knowledge, let's try to not make it happen again, right? Have some grace on your mistakes. And I think that helps a lot, instead of having to just, oh, you did something bad, you're never going to get this opportunity again. I think that's something that breaks a lot of people, and they just, that's why I was there for 11 years, It was a long time, the longest job I've ever had, right? But they allowed me to make those mistakes. They allowed me to learn, to go through the process, and reaching a good level, I think, of knowledge when I had to leave, and leave a good place, right, for the next person that wanted to take over or had to do my job.
And I think you bring up an important point, is a lot of times we think that mistake is going to take away that trust or that credibility, but actually owning up to that mistake and being forthcoming actually boosts it more. In my experience, the times that it took me a little bit, right? It's not that you're trying to hide it, but you're just like, oh man, like, I built up all this, this trust, and now I made this mistake, and now I'm going to, it's going to drop down here, and I got to work it back up. And I had a manager at one point that told me, because I brought it up to him, like, hey, this happened. He's like, that's fine. He did really great leadership in the fact that he told me it's okay to make a mistake. The sooner that you can let me know, right, it's going to be better not only for you but for us as a group. Because if I tell you, let's say, Fernando, you're my manager, and I do something and I break it, and I go, hey, Fernando, I messed this up, but we fixed it, and here's what happened. When people come and ask you, you're able to say, oh yeah, we're aware, right? Like it doesn't come as a surprise. Mm-hmm. And then now you and I are starting to establish that trust to say, okay, I know that if a mistake happens, Manuel's going to come and he's going to tell me, and I can go through it and I'll back him up, when the time comes. So establishing that two-way trust.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I think every leadership position should know, because that's the difference that you can make in somebody. I had a manager position or supervisor position, and it was a few people, and definitely I think I could have learned more. I was given those opportunities, and I try to replicate them with them as well. I just feel like supervisors positions are not for me, because I'm not a confrontational person, but I had to learn how to have those crucial conversations. There's a really good book called Crucial Conversations, and you learn a lot about how people react and how people you can talk to people the right way and be able, because you have the flight, freeze. When you have right in the middle of a conversation, right, you can freeze, you can just fly, you can go away, but it teaches you how to be able to do that and not break people. You can talk to people in the right way, the respectful way, and to get to them and make sure that they understand that probably there was a problem, and there's going to be probably a consequences sometimes, but that it's an opportunity to grow and not an opportunity to just give up.
So what did you end up doing? So now you've spent 11 years there. You've developed a pretty good career. Obviously, you're growing leadership skills, budgeting, project management, technical skills, even on the production side, right? So you're learning quite a bit in this role. So what makes you decide after 11 years that it's time to move on to something else?
Yeah, so this was in the middle of COVID. So there was a lot of factors, but I think the main factor was that I wanted to grow more. I wanted to be able to achieve more, and I felt that being at the position I had, it was going to be a slower process. I'm already married at this point. I met my wife at church. We married, and I have 2 kids now. So I had to think like, hey, like, I need to do better. How can I do this? And it's not like church doesn't want to give me an opportunity to do it. It's just, it's not gonna have that much of a role to make you grow more in my role, as a technician, as an IT. So I decided, I need to go corporate and see how I developed there. And so I started looking at postings of IT. Mind, I don't have an A plus or Net plus or any kind of certification at this point. I never finished college. I never went to college for IT. So and you get scared. You start seeing all this posts. Oh, you have to have 2 years of college, or you have to have a bachelor of computer science, or you have to have this certifications. So I got like, man, like, how am I going to do this? Like, that's why I think, because I thought about searching for a better opportunity way before COVID happened. I just never pulled the plug because I was scared that, man, I don't have none of these qualifications. What am I going to do? All the experience I have is here. And yeah, it's maybe a lot of years, but it's a shared role between production and IT, and it's not like I've installed big servers or anything like that. So it was a scary transition to have. Now that I have a wife, I have a kid, a baby just born, and I can't. That stability. I need stability. I cannot just go on and quit and then find a job a year later. I need something now. So in the middle of COVID, I remember just browsing around. I had taken the decision already, and I saw a posting for a job at Asurion, which is like an insurance company that does a lot of phones. They work with AT&T and Verizon, and it was a IT customer support as position. It was phone calls. You had to be an agent. You had to troubleshoot with them cell phone problems, and so I was like, okay, like I have some phone experience. I feel like I have good customer support. In church we deal with a lot of people, learn how to speak to people and stuff. So maybe that helped me be a good customer a specialist or something. So I took the job, and I went to the interview. I applied to the job. I took the interview. I'm a bilingual, so that helped. That they were looking for bilingual people for the job. So I was able to get the job. The interview, my first interview, because I never interviewed to work for church. I just like, hey, I volunteer. Oh, now you have a job. That's it. It just happened. And now I have to go to this interview. I'm like scared. I'm nervous. I don't know what am I gonna say. So I started looking for videos and try to educate myself to have a good interview. And so I went to the interview. The interview was great. My interviewer was amazing. I remember her as Cindy Campbell. I have it as a connection in LinkedIn as well. So I got the job, and then I went through the training process. Everything was great, and that was my first corporate job, and not necessarily a IT position, but it was I see customer relationships and how to build rapport with people, which I think is very crucial when you are in an IT position as well. And so I was there for a year. Yeah.
So a question I have for you there is, so it's your very first interview, right? You haven't had to do this before. So what was the process that you went through to try and like prepare for that, right?
Man, it was the most I can remember about this process is I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, you are afraid of failing. You're afraid of not making it. You're afraid of not getting the job. There's a chance they're going to reject you. That's not going to happen. And you start putting those things in your mind, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help. So, I was trying to do my best and how to be able to compose myself, how to if I don't know an answer, just be honest. Oh, I don't know how to answer that. But I did find a lot of resources online, to do. And then there was, I think there's a video on YouTube where it's a mock interview where they just ask questions and you pretend you answer them. So I found that video, and it was like a IT, it was a phone agent interview, mock interview. So I remember watching that video, and they were asking the questions about the experience, about what and it was a mocking because the other person can't hear you and they can't hear your answer. but I remember putting that video up and just preparing for that interview and just answering the questions. And you notice, if you don't want to like stutter or do so you just they teach you how to. There's a lot of resources online, and I feel that if you really want something, you have to make sure you do your best for the failure not to be on your side. And that's something that gave me a lot of peace. Like, okay, like I'm gonna do my best. If I'm not for the position, then it's not for me. If they don't choose me, then it's not for me, and there's gonna be another opportunity. So I just went through that process. And to my surprise, I did get the job.
And that mock interview, when you're kind of going through it, you mentioned, right, it's only a video, but were you answering the questions out loud, or were you just kind of listening? Because I'll tell you, early on in my career, I would think of questions, but a lot of it was just, I would think it through. And I've talked to other people, and it wasn't until later on in my career where I started to kind of go through questions and answer them out loud. And it's very different. Like, you can have the idea of what you want to say, but when you actually go to say it, like you said, sometimes you're stuttering. You're like, I have the thought, but I haven't actually said it.
Yeah, and English is not my first language either, so I had to make sure that I do my best pronunciations and my accent. Try to hide it as much as I can. And that was my thought, I know I don't have to hide it, but you were so nervous. And so in the moment, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sound very Mexican, because I'm Mexican. You're going to sound very Mexican, and you just want to try to, okay, you got to be calm. But yeah, I would definitely, I answer the questions out loud whenever I saw the video. And at first it was just like very like, not knowing what to say. But then, the more I hear this video, the more I hear the questions and trying different videos. Because if I only train for that video with questions that are realistically, they're probably not going to ask me in the real interview. So I just went through a series of videos trying to answer the questions and to be a surprise question. It's not a question they already know, it's a different question. So go through that question, answer out loud, and notice, okay, you do a lot of this, you stop aloud and don't say anything. So just try to train yourself to interview, basically. And yeah, that's basically the process that I went through for that first job that I ever interviewed for.
So then now you get the job, and what was it exactly what you thought it might be, as far as just like, oh, I'm just spending the time helping somebody troubleshoot over the phone? And what was that like? Because the very first job I had was something similar, right? It was a help desk, and it was doing remote, like answering the phones, and someone would call in that their computer wasn't working. Now, it's one thing when I can go through and troubleshoot and figure it out, and I'm on my own, and all right, well, let me plug this in, let me go through. But now you're having to visualize, okay, what are they doing? I'm explaining it this way. Are they getting it? Because I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges, and I still remember the call to this day, and it's been over 20 years, is I had somebody go through, and I told them to go through and reboot the computer, and, hey, can you turn it off and turn it back on again? And they were like, yep, well, I'm doing it. And I was like, okay, let me know when it's back on. Oh, it's back on. And I didn't understand how it was able to reboot so fast, right? And I was like, well, what's going on? It took me a while to figure out that they were just turning the power off on the monitor.
Oh, okay.
So then they would, turn it off. They're like, okay. And I was like, all right, go ahead and turn it back on. All right, well, let me know when it boots up. Oh, it's up already. It's at the same screen. And I was just like, okay, wait a minute. What button are, so then you have to learn, how do you ask the proper questions to understand what they're doing? What are you seeing? So is it a similar experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you have people calling, and there's Apple phones, there's Blackberries, there's the Android phones. So it was a mix, and I have no much experience. I never had an iPhone. I'm team Android completely. So I've never had an iPhone, but I had to learn how to use an iPhone. I had to learn how to go through and they gave us on the training, they gave us emulators. So we can go through the iPhone and the process and what it happens when you update, when you do this, how to turn them off. Because now, the phones that had the home button physical, you can just hold it and reset it. But now there's no home button. So how do you do it? So they had a good resources, a good knowledge base. I remember they had us type the question, and then we'll just see what process it should look like. And then, with time, you remember, oh, I remember this issue, so we can go through this. But yeah, definitely, I remember similar situations like, oh, can you restart your phone? Can you call me on your landline? Do you have a landline even? Because, nowadays, most people don't have one. Or do you have another cell phone you can call me from, or that I can call you from? And to troubleshoot the phone we are on that you have the issues with. And yeah, we'll go through the process, and we tell them, can you restart the phone? Okay, lock it, unlock it. Oh, I already restarted it. But that was too quick. Like, what are you doing? Trying to pinpoint relay the message. You have to turn the phone completely off and then turn the phone on again. Like, just not lock and unlock. And you explain that process to people, and you do it in the nice ways, because, it can be frustrating that you feel that you're explaining things right and you're communicating the right way, but for them, you're saying something completely different. So figure out how they listen to you, and the level of knowledge. Usually elderly people, they have less experience with the technology. So you have to be even more patient with them and try to explain the things as simple as you can do. And I remember this is my first experience with a remote tool, and it was Log Me In, I believe. You can have people install, go to a link that you send them on a text message, and they would open this link, and then you can remotely access their phone and be able to move things around, right? And so it was a, a good way to help people that didn't really know what to do on their phones. And with Android phones, I believe I had a little more experience because I had an Android phone. So I was able to go through the process a little more easier than an Apple phone or Blackberries. So that was like, they were in the dying period already where everybody was switching from Blackberries to Androids or Apple phones. But yeah, definitely similar experiences there when you mentioned this experience with your user 20 years ago.
So then now as you're going through and you've got this role, you're picking up the communication skills of really being able to explain things to somebody. So then what's the next step, right? Because and I guess another question that I have even before that one is, as you're kind of answering this, if you don't mind at some point letting me know, this is the point where you start to have that end goal in mind of this is where I want to be.
That's definitely at the end of my assurance job. After having some time, I'm like, man, I can't do this forever, right? The whole point of you looking for a different job is that you were going to advance. So how is that going to look like? And okay, what would be the ideal job for you? You don't have a lot of IT experience. Maybe you do, but not the experience that these companies need. So what are you gonna do? And it was a lot of thinking, a lot of trying to project and have a vision of like, okay, this is what you need to do. So I believe like after I had my insurance job, because in the end it turned into a sales job because it was mostly helping people with their phones and figuring things out for them. And at the end, it turned like, oh, now you need to sell the service. So when it turned into a sales job, I was like, I don't want this. I was on top of my production on the Vegas location for the AT&T team. I was like top 10 on production wise, because how many people you help, because you was praised, you took very little time to help them, how many calls you answer a day, all those metrics that they put for call centers, right? And when they turned to sales, that was like, boom, bottom. I was back, and that was like, it's not motivating at all. Like you kind of like, man, like I was doing so good, like, and now I'm at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of the team, so I don't like this, and you had to sell. It was not an option. You had to offer services every call that you took. So I was like, man, this is not for me. Sales is definitely not for me. It never been. Um, so I believe that I think my 1 year anniversary in LinkedIn, somebody reached out from Randstad. What's the name of this? This is a recruiting company, Randstad Technologies, I believe it's called, and they just messaged me through LinkedIn. Hey, like we have, 'cause I always updated my LinkedIn profile for whatever job I was doing or whatever I did, and then they had a configuration technician position. That's what it was called at CDW, and that's the warehouse that they have here in Vegas. And so I was like, oh, would you mind having a call with me to discuss this contract? That would be a contractor, and it's like a 3-month position. Would you like be interested in hopping on a call? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was at the point where like, man, I need to find another job. And boom, this person comes in like, oh, this must be a sign, for a different career, to take on your actual career that you want to go to. And so I took the call. It went really well, and they offered me they gave me an offer. I accepted. It was more than I was earning at Asurion as well. And there, I believe that was my first technical job I had, because it was all about configuring either computers or phones. It had to with imaging. I did imaging in that company. It was a production line basically. Like it was a long bench. It was like I believe 5 or 6 benches, and it was a line for yourself, and then you had to pick orders. So, there was a line of boxes, and you went and pick up boxes like, oh, this order has 10 computers, and this order has that many phones, and this order is something a bigger batch is 100 computers. So you had to go and pick what you need, and they printed out a I think I don't even remember what the name of the page was, but you printed a page, and he told you the process you needed to go through. And then it was like a pallet for 100 computers, and you need to change the RAM on all of them. You need to upgrade the RAM. So that was my first technical job. I know how to install RAM. I know how to do this. So that's where I transitioned from a customer support role to an IT job, I believe. And I got that job. I worked there for, I believe it was like 5 months. It was a very tough schedule. It was like 4 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. or something like that. And I didn't have a car at the time. It was only one car for my wife and myself. I had just recently had to move in with my mom. So it was like a whole different situation that I was in. But that job at CDW landed me the next opportunity. But being at that job at CDW was like, man, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, like focus on. I want to do PC. I want to do configuration. And so I started doing that. And I started looking for jobs. Okay, what are the requirements? And I remember I saw the Clark County job. When I was at CDW, I saw the Clark County job. The first posting I saw was Clark County Water Reclamation, as the name of the branch of the city. And it was with the water district, basically, waste management, I believe. But they needed a PC technician. So I start seeing the qualifications, and I don't meet them. Like I'm like, man, I shouldn't even apply to this because I don't think I'll make it. And so my shift focused to that. How do I get these qualifications? How do I get this experience to be able to get this job? So when I was at CW, it was 5 months, and I didn't want to work there anymore, but I didn't want to be without a job either. So I was like, man, I need to find a job. And my 5-month contract ended, and then didn't want to renew my contract. So I was without a job for, I believe, like a month. And then I found after CDW, after figuring out, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want to achieve. Then that's when I tried to find jobs that helped me with that. And I was fortunate to find this, it's a small, I don't know if maybe small, medium-sized managed services company, IT company. And name is Stimulus Company. Amazing people. I love working there. It was a very short job though, but it gave me more experience that I could have gotten anywhere else, I believe. Great people. I had a different mentor there. His name is Jesse. He was my system, what do you call them? Sysadmin. He was my sysadmin because the company basically, service a bunch of different people, different customers, different needs, different companies. And I got to work with tax offices, real estate offices. I even work with, I don't know if I can mention that one, but work with another company that was very different, very far. And so I got to have a mix of experience where I could fix computers, but I also had to deal with customers and build a rapport with customers and build a relationship with people so I can help them with their computers. It was half remote. It's a hybrid job. That was my first ever time that I was able to work remote at a company. So I remember I was at the office Monday and Friday, and I was remote Tuesday through Wednesday, and I was able to work from home, right? And go to the ticketed system. Most people must know what is this? ConnectWise it's where you put tickets in and you handle accounts and you put your time, make sure you put your miles if you drive to a location. So I learned a lot with them. They're great people. To this day, I have a good memory and had a good time with them. But that's where I found that shift when I worked from CDW to Stimulus Technologies. They're like, okay, I'm going in the right direction. So yeah, and everything started to fall in place.
So then you're going through and you're looking at these qualifications. Was it experience qualifications? Was it skill set? Was it like, hey, you need to have these types of certifications, or was it you just need to have this type of knowledge? Like what were some of those gaps that you were working towards?
Yeah, so I did a mix of everything because you needed obviously skills that I didn't yet have, and you also experience or 2 years of college. But I'm not going to college right now. I can't go to college. Maybe in the future I will go and try to do something, but right now I can't. I don't have the time to go to college. So I decided, okay, let's try to find jobs that will give me those skills. And so yeah, that's what I did. I that's where I found Stimulus. I found that job, and they gave me the skills, most of the skills that I needed for Clark County, which was imaging. They use a lot of um, I forgot this SCCM, to control computers, to have Active Directory, all those things that I didn't yet have the experience to. I got that experience there, so I started to do that, and I started to gather those. But yeah, it was a mix, definitely, of what skills that you need, what experience you need to be able to apply to this job. And I remember applying to Clark County while I was, I don't even remember how much time I was in there in Stimulus. I don't remember how long it was. Probably my LinkedIn page has it. But I was there for a couple months, and I was applying to different places. And I remember applying for CCSD as a computer technician for school, right? And I remember applying to Clark County as well. Clark County water reclamation. I never got, not even an interview. They saw my application and I didn't qualify, and they sent me an email. Oh, you can't apply there. And I remember doing the same for Clark County. And they saying, oh, you earned this much score for your application. If you are selected, we will call you. Did that. And I remember not hearing anything. I even got the CCSD job after going to Stimulus.
And the CCSD, that's the Clark County School District.
Yeah, that's school district, which is two different companies. A lot of people think they're the same thing, but this is really not. It's complicated. I don't even understand why they call themselves Clark County School District. But yeah, it was my first government job, right? And I went through the interview process, a panel interview, my first panel interview that I ever had. Same thing, a little scary, but they very nice. They ask you questions, you answer the questions, and then you do a little test at the end in the virtual machine. They put questions, and you gotta perform the actions this question does. And I passed the test, I got the job, and still no word from Clark County.
When you're going through for the school district, and they offered you the job, is it similar to like when you went to CDW? Was there a negotiation? Was it just like, hey, I want in, even though now you've had the experience, at that MSP? So kind of what was that process? Is it just like, hey, I just want to get in here, get this government job, get the stability, right, and I'll take what they give me? Or at the same time, are you kind of thinking, well, I have skill set, maybe I can try and negotiate and try and figure out, where I land within here?
Right. So every decision that I tried to make, because it's never perfect, but every decision that I tried to make was geared towards that goal of working for Clark County. That was my goal. That's what I wanted at the time. The benefits, the pay, it was really good. And for me at that time, like, oh, I really want to get in there. So I try to make decisions that got me closer to that, regardless if it was this company or that company. What is going to get me the experience and the skills that I need to be able to get that job? Because it's not super easy to get, not because it's not it's a hard job, but because people don't leave. A position opens because people retire. So that's the only reason why some positions in IT, at least, is a great team, and they are there until retirement. So I wanted to be ready for the next time that position to open, and so I believe Stimulus was a very good choice for me to go to get skills and experience. And I remember, like, it was two options. Working for when I wasn't rehired at CDW. I applied for different places. I remember applying for like a private Catholic church, a company that I interviewed for called Boxable. I don't know if you ever heard of Boxable, which is the foldable homes. There's a factory here, pretty cool concept, pretty good people too. And then stimulus. And I remember going to the interview at Boxable, getting an offer, but I didn't like the offer, and I tried to ask for more, but I couldn't get more. So I was like, okay, I can't do it. And then I got the stimulus one, and I saw the offer, and they were, I actually told them, hey, I would like to earn closer to this, and they met me in the middle. So I was, I'm good. We should do this. So I was there with the stimulus. I don't remember how many months. I think it was like 5 or 6 months that I was there. And then that's when I got the CCSD job, because on Clark County I didn't hear, but I applied at the same time, both jobs. So CCSD actually reached out. I went to their interview. They accepted me. I couldn't. It's a government job. You don't have a leeway to, negotiate how much they're gonna pay you, because that's what they offer is what you get. If you want it, if no, you can't, then you can't. And that's it. There's no really a back and forth when it comes to that. So I got the job, and I think I was there for about longer than a year when I started CCSD.
And so at CCSD, I'm assuming you're still, you discover that that's not actually the county, right? Like they're both Clark County, but one's a school district, which is its own entity, and then Clark County, which you're talking about, is actually working for the county. Right. So I'm assuming there you figure this out, and kind of what were you thinking? Like, okay, I'm gonna take advantage of this, continue to pick up skill set, build this, a reputation, and then, did you still continue applying at Clark County?
I did not continue to apply at Clark County. I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this. CCSD is still much better pay than I had it before, better benefits, insurance, all that, and I needed that for my family. Now with the second child, I needed that good insurance, and so I decided to stick around. I didn't know how long it was going to be for, but I knew that it was just going to be more experience for me, more years of experience, right, to be able to do this. And so yeah, I decided to just go along with it, pick up skill sets, make the time whenever I had time to continue training, continue learning, and continue trying to follow that path to get there, right? And learning, connecting, knowing, meeting people, going, just trying to network a little more, and just build as much experience as I could as I was working there. And yeah, it was I'm gonna say I had a good time at CCSD when it came to my leadership there. There was it's a funny story, because when I got my interview at CCSD, the principal and the assistant principal that they gave me the interview, that they hired me, when I got there to my first day, they were gone. There was no more principal, no more assistant principal. It was just that was it. And I arrived and I met Teresa, very nice office manager at TCSD, which she's retired now, I think. And she, they're no longer here. There's a transition in leadership. And so, I was just, okay, like, what do I do now? Like, the people that hire me are not here anymore. So how is this going to work? So I had a trainer there. His name is Mo, and he was one of the floaters for the CCSD, because, every school has a technician, but when there's no technician, they have floaters that cover the schools, right? So I remember getting there, not knowing what to do, going to a small office, and it was more of like a closet than an office, and having a computer, everything's a mess, no organization at all. And then they showed me another room, which is basically a classroom that they're not using. And half of the stuff is like maintenance, half of the stuff is all computers, iPads, laptops, a bunch of stuff. So I was like, wow, what did I get myself into when I started the job? And, soon after, there was what do they call them? A provisionary principal. I don't remember the name they used for them. But it was just the principal was there for the rest of the school year. That's it. Greg, his name was. Yes. And so I, explained the situation, like, this just worked the best way that we can. Just try to make sure that this is what we need. that we need to deploy laptops to the students. We need to pick up the laptops. We need to do inventory every so long. To my luck, they did inventory right before I arrived, so I didn't have to deal with inventory. But definitely, I had to learn how to use the system. They use SAP for inventory, and now they use Destiny, I believe, which is what was the library system. But it was a whole new different learning curve, different needs, dealing with students, dealing with teachers, with your principal, the office manager, the office people. It's a completely different environment for what I was used to. And it was another opportunity, to learn, another opportunity to grow, another opportunity to get some different experience. So I took it. I went for it. I already have the job, so I have to do my job and learn what I need to do. I think we had only it was 4 days of training that we had from the central IT office. And then after that, well, here's your school, figure it out. And so, yeah, that's what I try to do. I remember just the first, it was I believe I started in July, if I'm not wrong. No, I started in May. I started in May of 2022, I believe. Yeah, 2022. May of 2022, I started in CCSD. And then I was there for a whole year. I organized everything. I learned the inventory, find iPads that were missing for 5 years, nobody found, and doing a bunch of stuff. And there came a very good leader, Jennifer Bodecker. She's a great leader as well. And she basically gave me the trust. I trust what you want to do. What do you need to handle? Then I was able to convince her to give me the classroom for the storage and office, and I did that, and it was just another great experience, and that I was able to go through, and another great leader. I think I started, and I like to mention this because I like to give credit where credit is due. But my church, my pastor Guillermo and Pastor Luis, they're still my mentors till this day, and I'm very grateful that they gave me that opportunity at the beginning. And then Eric De Leon, which was the first person that ever teach me anything related to IT. And then going to the other jobs, Cindy, I have Jeff was my trainer in Shuri, and he was a really nice trainer as well. I still talk to him to this day through Instagram. And Stimulus Technology, Jesse, great guy. I still talk to some of the other technicians, Michael from SNHD, Southern Nevada Health District. He works there, another great guy. And CCSD, Mo, and my boss, my principal at the time, Jennifer Bodecker. I had I think the blessing of being able to have good leaders in my career that have allowed me to get to where I am now. And I think that's a very good, important, find good leaders, good mentors that can help you in your career. And when you have that and you have that opportunity, you can reach whatever goals you want to reach with your effort, of course, but with being able to find people that are willing to teach you, willing to give you opportunities, willing to let you make mistakes, so it's a mix of a bunch of things. It's never a perfect career path, right? There's always going to be mess ups. There's always going to be something that happens. But if you give yourself the opportunity to grow, if you give yourself the opportunity to make mistakes, and then your leadership also allows that, you're set. You have a good ladder to climb on.
Right. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you there. Is because I've seen it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've seen the memes and posts and all that. People don't leave bad jobs; they leave bad leadership or bad managers, and it's true. But when you find good ones like that, as much as you don't want to move on because you enjoy that time, they almost are encouraging you to move on, right? You've reached almost the ceiling of what you can achieve here. It's time for you to kind of move on and go on to that next role.
Right.
So now, after the CCSD, I'm assuming now you finally get from that point into where you're at now. Mm-hmm. And I know one of the big things is you wanted to kind of, you thank everybody and giving credit where credit's due, and that's great. I don't think that we've had many people that have kind of gone through and just named a bunch of people. But is there anything, as we're kind of wrapping up here, is there anything that maybe I haven't asked you that we haven't touched on that you think that, hey, this is something that I really think is important for people to kind of understand, outside of, having good leadership? One of the other things I think that you really touched on that was good was, kind of having that end goal. It's like, hey, this is where I want to be, and not just saying, well, all right, well, I don't have the qualifications or I don't have the experience, but you kind of developed a plan of, okay, this is what I'm going to do to get there. Here's the different roles. Here's the things I have to research on my own. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
It's a good question. I think it's very important that we know who we are, having the identity of knowing yourself. I think that we have every day we have the opportunity to be maturing in our character in who we are. Because I wouldn't be able to find good mentors. I wouldn't be able to find good leadership if I wasn't a good employee either. I believe that part of having or finding those good people is me. What am I going to offer? Because it's not only what you can get from people, but what is it that I'm going to offer as a person and as an employee to them as well, to my job, to my company. I think loyalty, commitment, and compromise are very important for anybody. They should, it's not dependable. Obviously, if you don't have a good leader, if you don't have a good, like you said, people don't leave bad jobs; they leave bad leadership. Sometimes, most of the time, I've been fortunate enough that I never had to do that because I've always encountered good leadership and good people, good mentors that help me in my career. But I believe that is if we have a good identity and character and know who we are, the better possibility of finding these good mentors are. The more possibilities, the better the percentage of finding these good people are. If we are a good employee, if we are loyal, if we are committed, compromise. Obviously, there's balance, right? We're not gonna work 7 days a week and overtime and do all this stuff. The time might come, and if your leadership and your mentors and your company treat you good, and obviously when they ask for these things, you're gonna do them with more joy, with more passion, because they treat you well, but because you are a good employee as well. So I believe that's something that's very important. And I see a lot of social media, we're saying like, your company doesn't do this, your company doesn't do that. I think it's a give and take. There's obviously bad companies. Nobody's going to deny that. But there's also bad employees. So I think it's if you find a good place to be at, be loyal, be committed, be honest about that job. You're in that job right now. It's providing for you. It's providing you food for your table, for your home, for your family. I think it's good to be grateful, to be to be able to know and compromise and have that passion with that company. And if it's only like me, most of these jobs I had, it was with a goal in mind, but that didn't mean that I had to oh, this is just gonna be a 3-month job, I'm not gonna give it my all. No, at the contrary, I would always give my all to these jobs, make sure that everything that I could do in my possibilities, and obviously in my role, because I'm also not going to be serving coffee to everybody. That's not a role that I have to fulfill, right? But do my job the best that I can, compromise to that company, be loyal to that company, and if the time comes that something better comes for you, obviously, put in your 2 weeks. I have always put in my 2 weeks for any job that I've left, and I've always left in good standing. And I've always had this is not to toot my horn or anything. It's just a result of being loyal, a result of being committed. When I leave my jobs, it'd be you have open doors here. If you ever want to come back, you can. And that's because, I've shown to be loyal in those companies. So I believe that's something, I don't know how many people have that same model, believe in that. But I believe in that. I believe that if you put your part, and you have better chances to find good companies, good leadership, good mentors that can help you in your career. It's a give and take.
It's a good point, and yeah, definitely something that similar to you, right? Like I always put in my best effort, right? Because that's what I was hired to do. But at the same time, there's a benefit to me. It is that give and take. And I guess last question before we kind of wrap it up here. So you've achieved the goal that you've set now. What's the next goal, or have you kind of established what you're looking to achieve next?
But yeah, I mean, obviously the goal is always to retire, right? To have something, some fun, so you can live in your retirement. Now that as I was at CCSD, I unexpectedly get that call from Clark County and like, oh, you won the job. I'm like, what? I thought you guys forgot about me. and so I've been there since July of last year, a little bit over a year working with them. And what it looks like for me now is obviously I don't feel like I want to work until I'm 65. I would like to retire a little earlier, and one of the things that I'm doing at the time is just trying to build my own company. Right, it's not 100% my focus on right now, because obviously my focus is my actual job. But when I can, I have a license to work. I do security cameras and network and technology jobs for commercial or residential. And so I try, that's like my baby that I'm trying to build, and hopefully one day I can have this company, and if I can retire before, then I will. And if I can, just keep working. I think Clark County is a great place to finish, if anything. Like, my desire is not to, like I said, I wouldn't want to work until I'm 65. But you need to do something to reach that. You need to do something to get there. And I'm 36 now, so it's about 30 years from retirement if I follow that path. But yeah, I think my next goal, or something that I want to focus on, is trying to build this company up, and maybe one day becomes sort of like an MSP that I can offer service, or maybe become something like if I get a C license to do construction work and do low voltage, because that's something that I also do, then I can go that route. But it's still not very clear. It's still a developing idea. I've been licensed for a year now doing that. I do my spare time, having the schedule I have with Clark County, which is like Monday to Thursday, 4-10 schedule. It frees up the weekends if I need to do some extra jobs, and I do them. So I think that's a good opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure once you kind of concrete that goal, just based on what you've done in the past, I can't imagine that you won't achieve it.
No, thank you.
So, thank you for coming and kind of sharing your career journey and your experiences, and the experience and wisdom that you've gathered over the years.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I want to just say something else. I think something that I didn't mention, and I think it's very important for people to hear this. It is important to get educated. It is important if you can get certifications on your hands. I think it's something that can help a lot. I think that's something that if I would have put effort into that area, I think I would have achieved maybe different things a little faster. Like, to this day, I have no A+ certifications or Net Plus or Cisco, any kind of certifications. And I have it set as a goal for this upcoming year to start getting some of those certifications under my belt. But yeah, it doesn't have to stop you. If you don't have the certifications, it doesn't have to stop you. You can still achieve if you put your mind toward those goals, if you put your mindset into achieving, into changing your life for the better in your career, it's completely doable. If I was able to do it with no certs and none of that stuff, it's just pure experience, and just proving that to people and putting that in paper. Obviously, like I think that it's about a mindset. If you can achieve it, just put your mindset to that, focus, and I'm sure that everybody could achieve good jobs and better jobs that they might think that they can't because of the certs or of the college or any education that they could get their hands on. My teacher in my college was YouTube. So I feel like if you're resourceful enough, you can achieve and you can get a good job.
Well, awesome. I appreciate it. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.